So in 1996, my dad takes me down to Santa Rosa Dodge, which was our local Dodge dealership, to see the new Viper GTS Coupe. So we go down, we check out the car. They had it sitting there in the showroom, and it was all roped off, and this car was absolutely stunning. It was one of the most beautiful cars I had ever seen, and there was nothing like it on the market. And I knew from the first moment I saw it that one day I was going to own one of these cars. I didn't know how, I didn't know when, but I was going to own one. And what I didn't know then was what the journey was going to be to owning a 96 Viper GTS Coupe. So fast forward to 2010, and I needed to buy a commuter car. I was driving back and forth to work in my 72 Challenger, and that just wasn't very practical, and my neighbors just hated it because how loud the car was, and I went to work at 4 in the morning. So I ended up buying a 2002 Z06 Corvette, and I felt it was the proper balance for a commuting car. I mean, it got great gas mileage at 30 miles per gallon on the highway, and it had 405 horsepower. So what's not to love? So the time that I bought the Z06, I was the president of the local Mopar club there in Silicon Valley. And every year we put on a car show. And that year happened to be a big anniversary event. So as president, I wanted to try and get a lot of Vipers to attend. So I got in contact with the president of the local Viper club, Maurice, and asked if I could come to one of his meetings and talk to the club members about coming to the car show. So he agreed, and of course I showed up in the Z06 and got heckled for it, rightfully so, showing up at a Viper event in a Corvette. And so we go and talk about the upcoming event, and we ended up getting a good turnout. And while we were there, Maurice gave me a copy of his book, The Viper's Buyer's Guide, and on the inside he wrote, "To buy your dream car and become president of the Viper Club." And he must have been looking in the future, because both those things did happen, and a lot sooner than I expected. So I wanted to join the Viper Club, but you had to be an owner to be a member, and I definitely was not an owner at the time. So then we fast forward to December of 2010, and we go to Normandin Chrysler and have my wife's 2007 Charger SRT8 Super Beast serviced. And while we're there, we go in and see Paul Normandin. He's a friend of ours, and just to say hi. And he says, "Hey, have I got the car for you?" And I was like, "Paul, the only car that you could have that I would want right now is a Viper, and I can't afford it." They said, "I just bought the Z06 not even a year ago and love that car, and I can't afford another car payment." And he said, "It is a Viper and you can afford it." And I was like, "Oh, great." I was like, "So next you're going to tell me it's blue." He said, "Actually, it is blue." He said, "It's in the service center. Go check it out." I was like, "All right." So we go check it out. And sitting in the service center is a 2001 Dodge Viper GTS Coupe ACR edition. And it was in sapphire blue, which is this midnight blue metallic color, and is absolutely stunning. And the car had about 62,000 miles on it, needed a little TLC. And I was like, "Wow, this would be a great car to have." I said, "But I can't have 3 car payments and living in an apartment in Silicon Valley. It just doesn't make sense." So did some soul searching and talked to some people about it, trying to figure out whether or not I should buy the Viper, keep the Corvette, what I should do. And because the Viper definitely was not as good of a commuting car as the Corvette was, because if I was lucky, it was going to get 20 miles per gallon, and just wasn't as easy of a commute car as the Corvette was. But what ended up happening was one of my coworkers told me, he said, "Look," he said, "if you got in a financial bind and you had to sell the car, which one would you be able to sell for more faster?" And well, the Viper, of course, was the answer to that. And he said, "Then it makes no sense to not buy the Viper." And I was like, "All right, you're right." So then I had to sell the Z06. And the car ended up going to New Zealand, of all places. And what had happened was not too long before, I think within the last year, they had the laws change where you could import cars into New Zealand that were low production, high performance vehicles and not convert them to right-hand drive. So now there's a huge market for cars like the Z06 over there. So I made a deal with a broker, had the car go over to New Zealand. And when I went to deliver the Z06, the gentleman told me to hang on to his card, and when I got tired of this Viper, to give him a call, and he would be happy to buy the Viper from me. And I told him, I said, "Well, I'll keep your number, but I'm not going to sell the Viper. I'm going to love this car." So we go and buy the Viper. It's about late January, early February of 2011, and we go and pick up this car, and I instantly was in love with this car and had it for about 3.5 years, put over 30,000 miles on it. We drove this car everywhere. Absolutely loved it. Did some track days with it, went to car shows, did all sorts of events with it, just had a blast with this car. Became the president of the Viper Club. So now it's September of 2014, and I'm out on a run in the Viper, and something unfortunately happens, and I wrecked the car. And the car ended up being totaled. And so at this point, I had a decision to make. Do I buy my dream 96 GTS? Do I buy the new 2013 Gen 5 Launch Edition that's also the blue and the white stripes? Or do I go completely different and buy a Ferrari F430 with the manual transmission? And in hindsight, financially, it probably would have made most sense to buy the Ferrari because they've just skyrocketed in value for being the last gated Ferrari. But I made the decision that this was finally the time I was going to be able to buy my dream Viper GTS Coupe. So now the search was on, and I had to decide what I wanted it to be. So it needed to be a low mileage car. It needed preferably a one owner car. It needed to be stock, or if it wasn't stock, it needed to have modifications on it that I would have liked. And it just needed to be as close to mint condition as possible. So I started searching the country, and at the time, there were probably a half dozen Vipers in the country, 96 GTS Coupes that were available. Half of them, though, were high mileage and beat and just not what I wanted. And there was one that was back east that had like 1,000 miles on it and was an absolute showroom condition. But being that low mileage and that good of a condition car, I knew I was just going to be devaluing by driving it because I was going to be driving the wheels off this car. So then I found one that's somewhat locally to me at a place that's now called American Supercars down in Fresno. And I contacted Marv Rose, he's a Viper Club member, and I said, hey, I want to come check out this Viper you've got. So we go down and we check it out, and it had everything on it done that I wanted. It had the stock 307 gears had been replaced with 355 gears. It had Edelbrock headers on it. It had Borla race exhaust system on it. I mean, it had all the right modifications done to it. Still had the stock wheels and stuff on it. And I knew that this was the right car. And so we took it for a test drive and just fell in love with it. And I was finally able to purchase my dream 96 GTS Coupe. It had 13,000 miles on it, and the car was in great showroom condition. So the path to owning my 96 GTS Coupe covered a couple of cars and several years, but finally I've got one sitting here in the stable, and I absolutely am thrilled to have it here. And if you like this video, go ahead and hit that like button. And if you want to see more of my videos as I upload them, hit the subscribe button and ring that notification bell. And I will see you next video.